Turk.
Een hele goede dag, ik spreek met Suzanne van de Nederlandse Energiemaatschappij.
Picture this. It's Rome, June 1983. The city is groaning under the first wave of a scirocco, that hot, sticky wind from Africa that makes everyone's temper just a little bit shorter. The air thick with dust and the smell of jasmine and exhaust fumes. In the evenings, the city squares are full of people trying to escape the heat of their apartments. The sound of scooters, that iconic Vespa buzz, is literally the soundtrack of the city. It's a city of impossible beauty and even more impossible secrets. A place where thousand-year-old statues watch the daily spectacle of modern life. And somewhere, inside the smallest, most powerful country in the world, tucked away behind those massive walls, lives a family. The Orlandi family. They aren't special, not in the way of cardinals or popes, but they are Vatican. The father, Ercole, is a lay employee, a messenger for the Holy See. They live in a Vatican-owned apartment. Their children play in the Vatican gardens. It's a life of strange, quiet privilege, cocooned from the chaos of Rome, supposedly the safest square kilometre on planet Earth. And in that family there is a girl, Emanuela. She's 15. She has long dark hair, a bright, slightly gap-toothed smile, and she always wears a yellow headband. She's just a kid, you know. She's into music. She plays the flute. She's part of the Vatican choir. She's just a normal teenager, worried about exams, boys, music lessons. On June 22nd, she heads out, just like any other day, for her flute lesson at Sant'Apollinare, just outside the Vatican walls. It's a day drenched in the most terrifying kind of normalcy, the kind you only recognize when you look back at it from the other side of a tragedy. That afternoon, she calls home. This phone call is the hinge on which the entire 40-year-old mystery swings. She speaks to her sister. She sounds a little excited, maybe. She says she's late. Why? Because a man, a stranger, approached her. He offered her a job. A job? Can you believe it? Distributing flyers for Avon Cosmetics at a fashion show. The pay was insane, something like 375,000 lira, an astronomical sum for a 15-year-old. Her sister tells her it sounds fishy. Just forget it. Just come home. Emanuela argues. She wants to do it. She wants the money. She says she'll call back. She never does. The hours start to stretch. The sun sets over St. Peter's Basilica, painting the sky in blood orange and purple. The Orlandi family starts to wait. That wait, man, that is a special kind of hell. It's the wait that starts at 7 p.m. with annoyance. Where is this girl? Slides into 9 p.m. with that cold knot of worry in your stomach, and finally crashes into 1 a.m. with the blinding, shrieking panic of knowing something is wrong. Something is terribly wrong. They call the police. The police, in typical fashion, brush it off. She's 15, sir. She's probably run off with a boy. She'll be back. They wasted the golden hours. They didn't know, nobody knew, that this wasn't a case of a rebellious teenager. This was something else. This was the opening move in a game so dark, so complex, that it would pull in the Pope, the KGB, Turkish terrorists, Roman gangsters, and the Vatican Bank. Emanuela Orlandi had stepped out of her music lesson and walked straight into the labyrinth. And the labyrinth, my friend, it belongs to the Minotaur. To understand why this disappearance became a global earthquake, you have to understand who the Orlandis were. They weren't just living in the Vatican, they were part of its fabric. Ercole Orlandi, the father, was a lay official of the prefecture of the papal household. He worked directly with the Pope. He was in the inner circle, a trusted face. This family had lived inside those walls for generations. They were, for all intents and purposes, the Pope's neighbours. So, when their daughter vanished, it wasn't just a Roman crime, it was a Vatican crisis. It was a breach of security, a personal insult to the Pope himself. This context is everything. It's the reason why, just a few days later, Pope John Paul II, the Polish Pope, the charismatic, powerful leader of the Catholic world, did something completely unprecedented. He used his Sunday Angelus, his public address to the thousands gathered in St. Peter's Square, to speak directly about Emanuela. He didn't just offer prayers, he made a public appeal for her release. He acknowledged she had been taken. This one act, that was it. This was the moment the case exploded. It confirmed to the world and to the kidnappers that this was not a simple missing person. The Vatican knew she was kidnapped. How? Why? This public appeal, meant to show solidarity, instead just threw gasoline on the fire. It signaled to the kidnappers, whoever they were, that they had hit the jackpot. They had a hostage who mattered personally to the Pope. And just like that, like a switch was thrown, the phone calls started. This wasn't a normal investigation. It became a circus of shadows. The family's phone, which was now tapped by the Italian Secret Service, the SISDE, started ringing off the hook. The callers were weird. One was a young man. They called him Pierluigi, who seemed to know details but mostly played games. But then came the main act. A man with a thick, strange accent. He sounded cold, calculated. The press dubbed him l'Americano, the American, though the accent was clearly not American. It was something else. And his demands were not for money. Money was never the point. His demand was insane. He wanted the release of Mehmet Ali Agca. Yes, that Agca. The Turkish militant, the member of the Grey Wolves, who had tried to assassinate Pope John Paul II in that very same St. Peter's Square just 2 years earlier. I mean, seriously, what on earth did a 15-year-old Roman girl have to do with a Turkish terrorist sitting in an Italian jail? It was a demand so bizarre, so politically loaded, that it instantly took the case out of the hands of the local police and threw it onto the desks of international intelligence agencies. This Agca connection became the real spectacle. It was the perfect smokescreen. Think about it. It's 1983, the height of the Cold War. The Pope is Polish, a fierce anti-communist. The attempted assassination was widely believed to have been ordered by the KGB, using Bulgarian intelligence as a cutout. Now, suddenly, a Vatican citizen is kidnapped, and the demand is for the shooter. The Italian authorities, the Vatican, the media, everyone jumped on this. This was the Bulgarian Connection, Part 2. The theory was that the kidnappers, agents of the Eastern Bloc, took Emanuela to pressure Italy to release Agca, so he could be silenced before he revealed the full extent of the KGB's involvement. It was a brilliant theory. It made sense. Too much sense. It was clean. It was geopolitical. It painted the Vatican as a victim, a pawn in the great game between East and West. And for years, this was the dominant story. Agca himself, from his prison cell, started playing games, claiming he knew where Emanuela was, linking her to the Grey Wolves. It was a complete mess, a confusing jumble of spies, terrorists, and conflicting reports. And while the world was looking at Moscow and Sofia, the real poison, the real danger, was much, much closer. It was right there, in Rome. The truth wasn't in the Kremlin. It was brewing in the dark, cobblestoned alleys of Trastevere, in the headquarters of Rome's most brutal criminal gang. While the spies and the diplomats were pointing fingers at the KGB, the real players were getting their hands dirty in Rome. The Banda della Magliana. This wasn't your Godfather-style mafia, all traditions and family. No, these guys were a new breed, vicious, ambitious, and plugged into everything. They ran the drugs, the gambling, the kidnapping, the murders in Rome. They had connections to the neo-fascist terrorists, to the corrupt politicians, and, most importantly, to the Italian secret services. They were the unofficial kings of the Roman underworld. And their leader, the boss of bosses, was a man named Enrico de Pedis, nickname Renatino. He was handsome, charismatic, utterly ruthless. And, as it turns out, he had a very, very special relationship with the Vatican. This is where the story gets so dirty, you feel like you need to take a shower after hearing it. Years later, Renatino's own girlfriend, a woman named Sabrina Minardi, turned state's witness. And the story she told, it was chilling. She claimed that she was the one who drove the car, that she was told to pick up a girl, that Emanuela was taken, kept in an apartment in Rome, and that Renatino was in charge of the whole operation. But why? Why would a gangster kingpin like Pedis get involved in kidnapping a 15-year-old girl? Minardi's answer, and the answer that many investigators now believe is the truth, was simple. Money. Not a ransom, but leverage. This is the dark heart of the whole mystery. It wasn't about Agcha, it wasn't about the KGB, it was about the Vatican Bank, the Istituto per le Opere di Religione, IOR. In the early 80s, the IOR was at the center of one of the biggest financial scandals in modern history, the collapse of Banco Ambrosiano. Its president, Roberto Calvi, known as God's banker, was found hanging from Blackfriars Bridge in London in 1982, his pockets stuffed with bricks, a clear case of suicide that screamed Mafia murder. Calvi had been laundering money, dealing with shady characters, and the IOR was his partner. The Banda della Magliana, led by Pedis, was one of the IOR's biggest clients. They were washing their drug money through the Vatican Bank. When the scandal broke and Calvi was killed, the whole system was in chaos. The theory is that the Banda had lost a lot of money, or perhaps the Vatican owed them money, or perhaps they were just being used as muscle by powerful figures within the Vatican who wanted to silence others. Emanuela Orlandi, the daughter of a trusted Vatican employee, was the perfect collateral. She was the leverage to make the Vatican pay its debts. She was a pawn in a game of billions of lira between priests and gangsters. The most bizarre proof of this connection, the part that sounds like a crazy conspiracy theory but is 100% true, is where Renatino de Pedis ended up. In 1990, he was gunned down by rival gangsters. A typical mob hit. But his burial? You won't believe this. He wasn't buried in some gangster's tomb. He was buried, with full honours, inside the Basilica di Sant'Apollinare, the exact same church where Emanuela Orlandi had her last music lesson. A mafia boss, a known killer, buried in a Vatican-controlled basilica, a place reserved for popes and cardinals. The official reason? The church said he had donated generously and repented. I mean, is that a joke? A gangster repents by getting buried in a holy site. This was a payment. It was the Vatican saying, "Thank you for your service," or, more likely, "Thank you for keeping your mouth shut." For decades, Emanuela's brother Pietro campaigned to have that tomb opened. He was convinced Emanuela's body was in there with De Pedis. In 2012, the police finally did it. They exhumed the tomb. The suspense was incredible. The world watched. They found De Pedis's bones, just as expected, but they also found nothing. No Emanuela, just more questions. It was another dead end, another theatrical performance by the authorities, but it cemented one thing in the public's mind. The link between this gangster and the Vatican was real, and it was filthy. This is where the story, for many Romans, tips over from a crime into a ghost story. And the prompt, your prompt, mentioned this. It's true. When justice fails so spectacularly, when the truth is buried so deep, people's grief and anger have to go somewhere. And in a city as old as Rome, a city built on martyrs and myths, that grief turns into folklore. The paranormal claims, they aren't about ghosts and ghouls in the typical sense. It's not like a horror movie. It's more sad. People, locals, would start to whisper, "Have you heard?" A tourist claimed they saw a girl crying by the Tiber, wearing a yellow headband. A security guard at Sant'Apollinare would hear flute music late at night, long after the church was empty. These are unsubstantiated claims, of course. They're not evidence, but they are the emotional truth of the city. Emanuela never came home. She was swallowed by the city, by its secrets. And so, in return, the city keeps her alive as a ghost. She haunts the Vatican's walls. She haunts the bridges where gangsters were hung. She haunts the church where her killer was given a saint's burial. This isn't paranormal investigation. It's the city's collective conscience. It's Rome's way of saying, "We haven't forgotten. We know they took her, And we know they are still hiding the truth. The ghost of Emanuela Orlandi is more real than any Vatican statement. And then, just when you think the spectacle can't get any more bizarre, it does. In 2019, the Orlandi family lawyer receives an anonymous letter. Just one letter. It has a photo of a grave in the Teutonic Cemetery, a small, ancient burial ground inside the Vatican. And the note just says, "Look where the angel points." The angel on the tomb of a 19th century princess was pointing to the ground. The implication was clear. Emanuela was buried there. The family, desperate, petitions the Vatican, and the Vatican agrees. In a rare show of transparency, they agree to open the tombs. The world's media descends. This is it. 36 years later, they're finally going to find her. The day comes. The stone slabs are lifted. The cameras are rolling. And the tombs are empty. Completely empty. Not just no Emanuela. No one. Not even the bones of the German princesses who were supposed to be there. The Vatican's official explanation was, "Oh, they must have been moved during renovations decades ago." I mean, that's just ridiculous. It was the most cynical, cruel piece of theatre. They knew. They must have known those tombs were empty. It was a perfectly staged performance to look like they were cooperating, while in reality they were just digging up empty holes. It was a message to Pietro, to the world. You can look all you want. You will find nothing we don't want you to find. My real opinion? My controversial take? Look, it's simple. Stop looking at the gangsters. Stop looking at the KGB. Stop looking at the Turkish terrorists. They were all just supporting actors. The main director, producer, and scriptwriter of this entire tragedy is one entity, the Vatican. From day one, their behaviour has been shady. From the omerta, the code of silence, to the outright lies, the misdirection, the theatrical tomb openings. This isn't the behaviour of a victimised institution trying to find a lost girl. This is the behaviour of an organisation engaged in a 40-year cover-up. Why? Because the truth, the real truth, is so damaging, so filthy, that it would shake the very foundations of the church. The Banda della Magliana theory, the financial scandal, I believe that is 100% part of it. Emanuela was taken as leverage in that dirty money war. Pedis and his crew were the muscle, hired by one Vatican faction to put pressure on another. They were the thugs at the gate. But I think, and this is the really dark part, that it evolved. Or maybe the financial part was just a cover for something even worse. This brings us to the theory that no one wants to say out loud, but which was floated by the Vatican's own chief exorcist, Father Gabriele Amorth. Before he died, Father Amorth, a man who had seen the absolute worst of humanity, gave an interview. He claimed, flat out, that Emanuela was kidnapped, not for money, not for agcha, but for a ring, a sex ring operating inside the Vatican. He claimed she was taken, used by powerful figures, and then, when the situation became too hot, she was eliminated. He spoke of parties, of satanic influences, of priests and diplomats. Now look, this is an explosive claim, and it's easy to dismiss it as the ramblings of an old exorcist obsessed with the devil. But, is it? Look at the last 30 years. Look at the global scandal of clerical abuse. Look at the systemic cover-ups that have been proven in Ireland, in America, in Australia, everywhere. The Church has a proven track record of prioritising its own reputation above the safety of children, of shuffling predator priests from parish to parish, of silencing victims. So, when their own chief exorcist says, "This is what happened," are we so sure he's wrong? What if the financial scandal and the sex scandal are two sides of the same coin? What if Pedis wasn't just a banker, but also a procurer? What if Emanuela was taken, and the Aga story was just a perfect distraction, a geopolitical smokescreen to hide a much more sordid, human-level crime? This is why the Vatican has fought and will continue to fight, giving up the truth. The Banda della Magliana are all dead or in jail. The Cold War is over. The IOR scandals are old news. Why still protect the secret? Because the secret isn't about dead gangsters. It's about men who are still alive, or whose legacies are still protected. Cardinals, bishops, powerful figures. The 2023 reopening of the case by the Vatican prosecutor. Please. After 40 years, now you open the file? After the Netflix documentary shamed them on a global stage, now they decide to investigate? All of this is just PR. It's a performance. They'll investigate for a year. They'll leak some old dusty documents. They'll say they looked into the Aga theory again. And then they'll close the file, lacking sufficient evidence. It's the same game they've been playing for 4 decades. It's damage control. It's a way to control the narrative, not to find the truth. The only person who has ever looked for the truth, really, is Pietro Orlandi, the brother. That man. You have to respect him. He has spent his entire adult life, 40 years, with his sister's picture in his hand, facing down the single most powerful institution on earth. He is the conscience. He is the voice that they just can't silence. They are just waiting for him to die. They are waiting for the world to forget. So, what is the Vatican? We see the art, the architecture, the Pope waving from his balcony. We think of it as a place of God, a fortress of faith, but that's a curtain. In reality, the Vatican is a country, the smallest, most secretive, most absolute monarchy in the world. It has its own laws, its own bank, its own police, its own spies, and its own sovereign immunity. It is a state built on secrets, a labyrinth of power, where medieval ritual meets modern geopolitics and a lot of money. It's a place where a 15-year-old girl can be swallowed whole, and the walls don't just stay silent, they actively work to bury the secret. Emanuela Orlandi isn't just a missing person, she is the Vatican's ghost. She is the one truth, the one reality that they cannot control. She is the living, or dead, proof of the rot that can exist behind the holiest of facades. Her disappearance holds up a mirror to the institution, and the reflection is not of God, but of something very, very human, in the worst possible way. And why do we care? Why, 40 years later, does this story of one girl in Rome still have such a powerful grip on us? It's not just the mystery. It's not just the Vatican Girl headline. It's because we see in her story a fundamental fear, the fear of being powerless, the fear that an institution, a system, a power so great can simply erase you. It can take you from your family, from your life, and then spend the next half-century denying it even happened. We care because of Pietro Orlandi. We see his fight, the fight of one man against an empire, and we have to believe that truth can win, that one person's voice, if it's loud enough and persistent enough, can break down walls, even walls as high and as old as the Vatican's. We are obsessed with this story because it's the ultimate David versus Goliath. But in this version, Goliath doesn't just have a sword, he has a bank, an army of lawyers, and a direct line to God. And David just has a faded photograph of his sister. Ultimately, this story is a ghost story. But the ghost isn't Emanuela. The ghost is the truth. It's a truth that is just wandering, drifting through the marble corridors of the Apostolic Palace, whispering in the archives, rattling the locked doors of the Vatican Bank. It's a truth that won't rest. The paranormal sightings of a girl with a flute are just the outward expression of this. It's the city, the world, sensing that something is deeply, profoundly wrong. This case will never be solved, not really, until the Vatican itself decides to tell the truth. And telling the truth would mean admitting to crimes that go far beyond a simple kidnapping. It would mean admitting to partnerships with gangsters, to financial corruption, and, God forbid, to something even darker. It would mean tearing the whole holy facade down, and they will never do that. So the ghost will keep wandering, and Pietro Orlandi will keep walking, and all of us, we will keep watching, waiting for that one crack in the wall, that one whisper that finally brings Emanuela home.
Before we close the book on this chapter,
I have to be honest with you, Stories like this aren't just recited, they have to be built, piece by painful piece, digging through 40 years of secrets, connecting the dots between the Vatican, the mob, and the spies. It's a heavy lift. These deep dive narratives are labours of love, and they take weeks of research and writing to bring to life. If you felt something watching this, and if you value this kind of in-depth storytelling over the usual 10-minute summaries, please consider supporting the channel. A simple like, a comment, or hitting that subscribe button actually makes a massive difference. It tells the algorithm that quality matters, and it buys me the time to go down the next rabbit hole for you. Thank you for listening, and for helping me keep these whispers alive. I'll see you in the next one.